supported us.
Looks like we lost Keith. Gonna wait for a couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm back. I'm not sure what happened. My computer just decided to leave the chat room on a dime. Everybody hear me okay? My back line?
Yes.
All right. This is the world we live in with technology. You love it because we can all come together, but then you hate it because when you're really counting on it, sometimes it fails you. So as I was sharing, wanted to shout my mother, Barbara Searles, out, also a great woman in mapping in her own right. And then my girlfriend, Evie, who had a chance to come to her first GIS conference, was very supportive of the EDGE event we had out there in Palm Springs. And I just love that everyone can be a part of this community. And to that end, let's talk a little bit more about the EDGE community and what we're doing here in the coming weeks. So as I mentioned, we just had a great event out in Palm Springs, which was awesome. And then just this past weekend, I was out in Denver, Colorado for the AAG conference. Shout out to AAG. They're doing some amazing things. They had so many great JEDI and DEI events. I was for it. When you look at their agenda of different meetings, I mean, there were at least 20 to 30 social justice, DEI related, sessions that they had. Truly amazing. They had some great networking opportunities, and just love the work that they're doing. And they're a very key strategic partner of ours. Hopefully some of them are joining us now, and we're looking forward to doing some more with them. Then next month on April 10th, I've been invited to be the keynote speaker for the Pennsylvania GIS conference. Really excited about that. Thank you folks for the gracious opportunity. We're going to have a great time and do some awesome advancement in Pennsylvania around diversity, equity, inclusion. Shout out to Tom and all the folks there doing good work with that committee. And then we're really excited because next month we've got 2 back-to-back events on Fridays from April 21st, and then talk a little bit more about one on April 28th, but on the 21st, we'll have our next EDGE-inar, and it's an EDGE success story, EDGE-inar. And so we're gonna talk about some of the great successes we've already had at EDGE, and some of the folks who really were kind of EDGE folks before they were an EDGE, and things that we're doing with Urban GIS that now these folks are doing amazing things. And then we're gonna celebrate all the different companies and organizations and individuals that will be receiving awards at the first annual EDGE Awards that we'll have on April 28th. Go next slide. So you don't want to miss that if you're in Florida or in the Tampa area. Even if you're not, you can still support it. We're giving out 5 scholarships to students in the Florida area, 1 high school student and 4 college students. We're giving out awards to companies who are, really been stalwarts in the industry with respect to DEI, to organizations, both community and professional organizations. It's going to be a great time. We hope to be on a lovely boat and a great night in Tampa, and we're going to have dinner. It's going to be an amazing event, and we're going to also have some networking beforehand. So even if you don't want to buy a ticket, which will be $150 for the boat outing, and also part of our fundraising, you can still come and participate in the networking in the early part of the night. So definitely look into that. You'll be hearing more about that. And we're also excited this summer in July, we've got 2 amazing groups of events. One will be at the Esri UC, which shout out to Esri, very supportive of what we're doing. And we had a booth last year. We're hoping to have a booth again this year. So definitely come by and see the EDGE booth. And then we are looking to participate possibly in a couple different socials, one on the African-American side and one on the Latin side. And then hopefully another great DEI SIG that we always do with the Partner Advisory Council, And then we're looking to also have some networking events and just a lot of cool stuff. So stay tuned for a power-packed user conference. We're really hoping to, take this whole DEI movement to the next level within our industry. And then lastly, we're setting up a geospatial boot camp here in Florida to expose the Tampa area kids to drones, to geospatial, to all these different things. And we're also having some interesting conversations that are still early, so I can't share too much, but I'm hoping to also be a part of some cool geospatial symposiums and boot camp in Washington, D.C. with Howard University. So we got a lot of cool stuff on the way. And then in the fall, we'll talk more about it. We got some cool things we're setting up in the city of Chicago, my hometown. So we're not stopping, we're going, and we hope to see everyone else do some amazing things out here and then share it with us. And we want to feature you in some of these EDGE-inars. We want to feature you on our website and our social media. And we want to celebrate people who are celebrating diversity, equity, inclusion, and who are actively being a part of making the change that we need to make in this industry. So with that, let's go ahead and turn to our Power Pack panel and talk some geospatial, talk some diversity, equity, inclusion, and learn some more. So again, my name is Keith Andre Searles, for those who are just joining us, the founder of EDGE and the CEO of Urban GIS. And this is, EDGE is really an extension and more or less a foundation for Urban GIS. And we appreciate our sponsors like North Point Geographic Solutions, Esri, and many others who've been supportive. And we're looking for more support as we go down the line. So without further ado, I'm going to give every lady a chance to just talk a little bit about themselves and just share their educational background and their title, and just 30 seconds, just introduce yourself and let folks know who you are. Carolina, we can start with you.
Yes. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Carolina Palazzo. I work for Esri. I wear a variety of hats as an HR leader. And so I'm super excited to be here with everybody today. I can just share a little bit with you kind of my role in DEI here and how I engage in it. So definitely being responsible for a team of HR professionals that are recruiting and developing people across the organization, but also working closely with our HR leadership team to support some of our different initiatives around diversity and equity and inclusion. And I really landed here out of a career that's been grounded in coaching and helping people. My education at UCLA was really focused on topics around social justice at a global and local scale. And so DEI just feels really personal to me, especially my mom immigrated from Brazil and my dad is Mexican American. And there's so many things just both in my identity and my career where I feel really excited to be here today, just being able to hear more about some of the work from others, but also be able to share more of my experiences.
Thank you so much, Carolina. I already learned something. I didn't even know anything about the Brazilian or Mexican background. Mucho gusto. Gracias. So we'll go right to Mckenzie Fox.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Keith. My name is Mckenzie Fox. I am a GIS analyst with Urban GIS. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. Currently working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on their enterprise geospatial team, where me and my team help pretty much every kind of person throughout the service, from biologists and land managers to law enforcement officers, park rangers, fire ecologists. We kind of help consult and support all those and provide IT support, as well as like data management support for people making surveys, GIS, any other GIS projects. I also teach some of the introductory GIS courses. We're trying to get a lot of people from ArcMap to transitioning to ArcGIS Pro. And also I have developed a bunch of resources for 508 compliance and accessibility for GIS applications. And I help a lot of our users make sure that their story maps are 508 compliant, as well as like present on all the tools that we can help with that. Yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Thank
you for joining us, Mckenzie. And, I'm a little biased, Mackenzie's killing it. You know, works for my company, Urban GIS. And we have some amazing, amazing GIS analysts, Stephanie Saunders, Catherine Giuliano, and others. And we're just really glad to support women in GIS. And we believe in what you all are doing. And also I have to shout out my entire administrative staff. It's all women staff. We have one person who helps with IT, but short of that, I have all women administrative staff. So shout out to them because they make EDGE possible. They keep me on track. They make sure our HR is tight, our marketing is tight. You know, just everything. They run my operation. Really, it's really them. So I just want to shout you all out on this special month and thank you for all your hard work and service. So let's go to the one and only, your Lauri Young.
Hey, Keith, thank you so much. Thank you. It's great working with you and all of your team. And I just wanted to shout out to the Pinays in the rooms. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hey, my name's Lauri Young and I work at Esri. My pronouns are she, her. I've worked at Esri for not very long by comparison, about 13 years. I've been in GIS for about 20 or so years. Before Esri, I did a lot of work in countries across APAC and the Middle East. And my background is more on the data side. So like what comes first, right? The GIS database or the data. I err on the side of the data. For me, you know, the work that we do here as women is really important, and more of our faces and more of our souls and spirits need to be out there and uplifting more women to speak their truths and be involved in GIS and use our tools. I loved hearing like Mckenzie, the work that you're doing, that's awesome. You know, we have the tools to make the change. And so thanks again, Keith, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Lauri. It's always amazing working with you, doing the great work we're trying to do here at the PAC Advisory Committee. Let's start with you on just digging in a little bit more. And I love having you on this because I know how passionate you are about DEI. I know how passionate you are about this not just being, you know, technology that is just there for the sake of technology. It's about human beings, right? It's about helping people. Can you talk a little bit more about, you know, some of the things you do within your division, both from on the partner support side, the social justice tools, and even your work with the PAC?
Yeah. So Keith, you and I met because of at Esri, we have something that's called the Partner Advisory Council, and there's about 25 to 26 partner organizations that are represented there. Urban GIS is one of them, and then there are committees that are basically dedicated to advocating for new programs that support our partner universe, our communities of partners. And one of the new committees is the DEI committee. And that's been active for what, Keith, like about 2 years now?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yep.
And yeah, it's my pleasure, and I'm humbled to work with there's about 6 or so folks on the committee. We encourage people, other partners, to be involved in some of the subcommittee work that we do. We are active in events. We've successfully had a couple of town halls and also SIGs at several of our EPC, our Esri partner conferences. We hope to have more. And I think in terms of that work, you know, it doesn't mean that we're solving all the problems in terms of racial equity and social justice. I think what it is first in the spirit of, I think the Esri kind of ecosystem is we learn from each other. And so I think working with you, Keith, I learn a lot from you and your team, your very just wonderful group of women that work for you. And then I think from an Esri point of view, getting that feedback back from our partners is very important. And so we're always learning to understand how we can be better. And so part of the Partner Advisory Council and specifically the DEI committee is getting that feedback, right? Through whether it's just understanding what's happening in the community at the events, through surveys, and also expanding our program. So we're always really open to that. Yeah.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. And, glad to be a part of that committee and working closely with you, because I believe, groups like the PAC are places where we can ignite DEI within our industry, right? And really have that influence, not just within some of the, kind of known commodities as far as partners, but expanding this partner network and even expanding the way partners approach DEI and the things that they're doing within their organization. So there's an exponential aspect and possibility here. So just glad to be a part and serve with you. You've been so awesome working with over the years. Appreciate you.
Right back at you.
Thank you. So let's stay on the Esri side of the house. Carolina, I want to hear a little bit more about some of the things that HR is up to within Esri, and just anything that you're involved with that you want to talk about, both from a career change or advancement for you personally, as well as what you all might be doing and spearheading within DEI or other endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I just want to first recognize is Esri is a really special place. I've worked for a few large companies, and I think the thing that makes me excited to be in HR at Esri is the people. So I don't even know if that's almost cliche, but the people at Esri are really passionate. They are very mission driven. And so it's a place where we get to do some really interesting work, I think, around how do we then continue to support this environment of people growing, this environment of equity, of diversity, of including people, bringing them along. We know we're not perfect. And that's where a lot of my work is grounded as an HR leader, as someone who's participated in some of our initiatives on the back end, I guess you would say. So I think some really key things we've focused on are advocacy and enablement. So how do we make sure that our key HR leaders and touch points in the organization, so recruiters, HRBPs, and so forth, really are stewards of diversity and equity and inclusion? So do they understand what it means to lead an environment that is grounded in those principles? Do they understand how to navigate that in their work, how to be champions for change and so forth? And so that's been a really important focus area for us. We've done quite a bit around training our workforce, around partnering with Power to Fly. So that's a diversity recruiting and retention organization who's really given us some great trainings to make sure, hey, what are we missing in our sourcing practices? What are we missing in the way we do our work that's holding Esri back, so to speak? So we've really spent the past few years making that shift and transition internally with our HR talent. I think another big element of the work I've been involved in is recruiting. So we know that recruiting has a huge strategic impact on the diversity of our workforce. And so how do we look at what are things we should be proactively doing or evaluating where, again, is it holding us back, or is it helping us move forward and hire individuals who maybe are overlooked, who can make a really big difference for Esri? And so that's where we've really focused on our role in with organizations like the Society for Women's Engineering, a few other kind of diversity recruiting focused organizations, the National Society for Black Engineers, just really how do we build a relationship, build a presence at their events, get Esri's name out there, and so forth. And then we've even been really specific about, it's not enough to just go to these things. How do we hold our team members accountable for, your first thought when you're having to look for candidates for a role is how do I encourage diversity in this team? So how do I look for that as a talent source? How do I look to these organizations we're partnered with and their talent databases and so forth? So it's definitely, we're not perfect. It's a work in progress. Our focus right now is behaviors, and how do we get people to continue thinking about DEI and what they do so that it becomes a lens, not it's just what you do, right? It's not something you specifically have to remind yourself to do. It's how you go about your work. It's how you think about your work. And so that's been a key pillar of our recruiting strategy. And then I think the last thing that's been pretty exciting to see has been how we've really evolved our partnerships internally on the HR side. So for us, right, how do we move forward as an organization? How do we make employees feel more included? How do we recognize that we have people from all over the globe? We have people from all over the US. We have people of all sorts of gender identities, expressions, experiences, ethnicities, and how do we recognize where maybe people don't feel as comfortable living in that identity at work and bringing that full self to work, and how can we make that more comfortable? We've built, we have employee resource groups. We're trying to really kind of re-engage, energize some of those relationships. But one we've had a really strong partnership with is our LGBTQ plus group. We've really just been able to build a working partnership where they're really honest with our HR leadership of like, hey, here's where we can see opportunities. And we've seen actually really great changes come out of that. We've made updates to our application process. Some of you, especially being in the GIS community, may have noticed now we have pronoun stickers at our user conferences and things like that. That came directly out of that partnership. So that ability for our ERG to feel safe and comfortable and open, bringing us feedback, and our leadership team's commitment to, okay, like how do we do this? How can we really hear this? And I think Lauri mentioned it earlier, had said something about like, how are we listening to each other? And so I think that's what we're trying to keep doing and keep getting better at. So and really kind of the future of that is how do we amplify, how do we build relationships with some of our employee resource groups that we're not as strongly kind of embedded with? How do we amplify our recruiting efforts? It's really still these three pillars I spoke about, but just how do we continue to maximize their impact?
Wow, thank you so much. I've been around Esri for several years, particularly, consulting and supporting some of the DEI efforts. And I learned a lot there. There's a lot of information I'm not aware of. Maybe both you and Lauri can speak to, how do you overcome some of the challenges in a large company such as yours that has great divisions, great centers of excellence, but sometimes one hand doesn't know what the other is doing as much. And I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you all on, because I know even within Esri, there's so much happening. It's a great opportunity to learn, but then as a partner, as a customer, as a user, I think it's really important for the world to know about some of the things that you all are doing in DEI and that you're care and passion for it.
Well, I think, Lauri, you go first. Everyone just heard me talk, and then I'll share.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't know. A lot of things come to mind. I think from my perspective, Keith, is the question more about, what do you suggest? Like, are you looking for kind of our experience and then what's worked, what's not?
Yeah, you can go that route, any route that you feel comfortable with. It's really kind of an open-ended question just to let you share.
Yeah. I think so, I think I shared, I've been in GIS, I've been doing this for a little bit of time. And one thing for me, I think what was a big gap was the lack of role models, right? And so as women, I mean, there's still in entry-level positions, I think it's about 30% or so of women going into technology. And then I think of that, there's about 26% overall in tech that stay in. And then it's like single digits in terms of like leadership roles and much less CEOs. And so definitely there is more representation that's needed, because, when I was kind of going into my career, for me, I think I had this like crazy imposter syndrome, because I grew up in a household with my grandmother, my Lola, she was just, powerful woman. So was my mother. Keith talked about the women in his family. I had the same. Those were my role models. And then coming into my career, there was not a reflection. And so if that is the case for you, I strongly suggest be a role model, find a way to be a role model. I mentioned also, like, sometimes women feel, not only women, actually a lot of people feel like maybe because I don't have a reflection of me here in my career, maybe I'm an imposter. And I think the core of that, there's a lot of things, but the core of that is that
I
idea of
think we might have
belonging.
lost Lauri a little bit. Might have some connection issues.
Can you hear me now?
I hear
Let's
her.
let you pick up right there, Carolina.
Yeah? Can you hear
and
me
then we'll
now?
come back.
Oh,
to
I hear
Lauri.
you, Lauri. Does everyone
Yeah,
else
you
hear
do?
her?
Maybe.
I can hear you, Lauri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe Keith doesn't hear me.
You've lost it.
Did
Uh-oh, I think maybe she's back.
yeah. Keith, we can't hear you.
Are you guys
Or
hearing me
you
okay?
can't hear us, maybe.
It's just-
Yeah.
We can
just
hear
on.
you.
Everyone else is in. Crazy, all of a sudden.
Hey, it's all good. So I think where I was going with that is this concept of belonging is really important. And so I think if there's folks out there that are feeling like, oh my God, I don't belong, or I have this imposter syndrome, find ways to, find people like you or who challenge you and who believe in you, right? And really have that relationship with your own confidence. Make that relationship with your own confidence. That's very, very important for all women who are just going out there in any career, much less tech. Tech is pretty brutal. GIS, maybe not so brutal, but yeah. So and also if anyone who's out there who's starting their career, please ping me. I'm happy to help and share one-on-one any kind of personal experiences that I've had as well, if not for a forum like this.
Thank you. And by the way, folks, we do have the comment area, so feel free to drop some questions and discussion points or anything that you want to add to the mix. Caroline, I want to give you a chance to also kind of respond to that.
Yeah, I love what Lauri's saying about, how it can be hard when you don't see people who look like you or, right, if you see it, you can be it. And so I think I've been really fortunate, I'm in human resources that tends to be a little bit more female dominated. And so what I have experienced or seen and how I've internalized it into how do it still influence and impact beyond me when I maybe feel like I'm a different voice or a different person in the room, is just kind of recognizing that. So I've worked in other industries where sometimes I was the only woman in a room of, men making important decisions. And I'm not just the only woman, I'm also the most junior person. And just learning from those experiences to recognize what is my unique, maybe there's a power in that. Maybe there is a power in that I have a different voice or a different experience. And how can I find a way to make that power heard? How can I find a way to have influence, to have impact, kind of like Lauri's suggestion, right? Where do you find the people who are going to help you build that confidence? Where do I also kind of find, these different people who maybe I'm needing to influence? You asked Keith about how do you get things aligned in a company when you have different silos or different goals and priorities? That's life, right? That's every organization. Everyone's going to have a different goal and priority in a business or in your personal life. And I've really found that the way we move things forward is through that influence and education. So how can I use my unique perspective as a strength to help educate somebody else, to help enable them to maybe see things a little differently, whatever the topic is, whether it is DEI related or it's just right finding my grounding when again maybe I'm an outlier in a room or whatever that looks like. And then also I think how does then this influence how I approach my work is I think that's why I love being in HR is I made a very intentional decision in my career that I wanted to be in a spot where we are focused on big picture of how we hire people, how we develop people, how we set a culture. And so also recognizing then how do I make sure then as our company evolves, again, some of the experiences I'm talking about a little earlier in my career before Esri, but how do I make sure no one has to be that only woman in the room again? And if I see it happening, how do I, what sort of role do I play in that as somebody who sets cultural standards at the company? So I think it's been important to find a voice, even when you feel like maybe you don't have one, but then also how can that voice resonate with maybe people you're afraid it won't? What do you need to think about to land?
Wow, some excellent points, ladies. Really appreciate your transparency and your passion and sharing your life experience. And speaking of visibility and setting standards, I want to turn over to you, Mckenzie, to learn some more about what you're doing out there fishing wildlife. While I was there in Denver at AAG, had a chance to sit down with Mckenzie and Stephanie Saunders, and these two ladies pretty much run that GIS operation for an entire federal government agency. And so I'm just really so proud of the work that they're doing, but I don't think people really understand what that looks like. So can you talk about the scale, all the sort of things you get into, and was this the type of position where you thought, hey, I'm gonna do some cool maps on some environmental things, and then that'll be it, because you're gonna become an IT person and touch so many different areas?
Yeah, I do want to shout out to Stephanie Saunders, who brought me into this position, as well as Keith. She, when we were in the interview, she was saying, are you sure you want this? This is a lot of IT. And at the time, I was making a career change into the GIS field, and I had been interviewing for like 8 months. And so, I was like, yeah, I mean, I'll do whatever, as long as getting into the GIS field. And I kind of had this preconceived notion that, IT is kind of like maybe boring, definitely male dominated, but I was open to it, and it is really exciting for me. I enjoy kind of shifting to the left brain tasks as far as, like application development and deployment, troubleshooting. We get every day multiple users submitting tickets. They can't get ArcGIS Pro to install, or it's freezing, or, anything you can imagine going wrong with the computer. And then, like, to me, I see that as kind of like a puzzle, and figuring out the why and the how, and how to help them get their job done, basically. So yeah, it's been really exciting. It has been intimidating. Lauri, what you said about kind of the imposter syndrome, I feel like it resonates with me, because it's such a different world than what I was used to before. And that you do encounter sometimes people assuming you don't know something when you might, and also that confidence where it's hard to speak up and say, actually, I do know that, like, you don't have to explain this to me. So it's definitely been a lot of learning curves, and then finding my voice and confidence to speak up for what I know, and also what I want to know. And yeah, some of the other work, aside from the kind of technical stuff that I do, as I mentioned, working with 508 compliance for GIS apps and maps. It's kind of a newish and emerging field, and a huge need in the GIS world. And Esri's been really great working with us, and making their products more accessible. Teaching people that, hey, in this story map, every image you put, it is federally required that you put in alt text, and make sure there's credits, and make sure it's screen reader friendly. And so a lot of our users know that this is a need, but they don't really know how to go about it, and what tools are available to them. So part of my job was creating a SharePoint page where I kind of was listing what tools are available to them. We have a color contrast analyzer app that people can easily download and check color contrast. Also screen readers, showing them how to use NVDA is a good one. And also audio descriptions has been a big hurdle for us because it is a little bit more of a complex process. But it's, it's federally required that any video you put out there should have not only like captions, but transcript and audio description. And so we've been able to work with some external contractors and get a service available for anybody who has a GIS training or video that they want to get that service out there and have that as an option for users. So that's been really great for making sure that the content we're putting out, especially public facing, is accessible. And yeah, so it's been great. Some other work we've done recently on the environmental justice front has been helping wildlife refuge and fishery programs ensure that their grant funding is benefiting disadvantaged communities. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Justice 4D initiative. There's a data layer which is publicly available and basically identifies census tracts as disadvantaged communities or not. And that's based on environmental or climate burdens. Those census tracts identifying as having one of those, whether it's pollution, flood risk, agriculture loss, and the census tract being above the threshold for an associated socioeconomic burden, such as like low income or education, unemployment. So this has every census tract in the US and identifies it as disadvantaged or not. And then our team was called upon to perform analysis to take all these locations for fish passage programs or wildlife refuges and perform an intersect to see where those refuges lie. Are they in disadvantaged communities, or how close are they, and how can our federal funding go to programs that will benefit those communities, so they have access to the refuges. And yeah, so I could keep going, but I'll pause for a second.
All cool stuff. And I know the folks at Fish and Wildlife really love the work you're doing and how you were able to come in as someone who's relatively green in the GIS field and just learn so much in a short amount of time and really do some dynamic work. And they especially highlighted your work with the folks with disabilities and being able to have better access to the tools, and how what you're doing is really not only affecting the GIS community, but you set some standards there for others in other parts of tech with the work you're doing. So kudos to you for that. And I want to shout out our folks, best buddies. We believe that everybody, we're all about diversity of all sorts. We believe people with physical and mental disabilities, they can still do some great work in this field, and we want to expose it and make it possible for everybody to participate. So really appreciate what you're doing there. So on that kind of topic of challenges and overcoming things, we can open this up for anybody. You all can, figure out who wants to go first. What are some challenges that you've overcome? Have you found that, you've had some unique challenges as women in this industry? Anyone? Doesn't matter who.
So I think I talked a little bit about, just that imposter syndrome and just seeking belonging, but I'm just going to go right to like what I've learned. So being in GIS, and I came about GIS accidentally, just to be really clear. I didn't go to school thinking, oh yes, GIS. I love maps, and maps tell you not only where you are, but where you might go. And, and I sometimes, because, I always seek my own confidence, I like to know where I'm going, right? So maps did that for me, but I want to kind of share, at the end of that, of kind of the learning is that all of you, this is what I learned, we have a superpower. And that superpower is GIS, because we have that appreciation for maps, we have that appreciation for spatial analytics. We see things not flat. We see things in like time and space. And that allows us to make alive data and make alive things that, you know, are commonplace. But more importantly, something that I think I just kind of want to really get to before, you know, I think we have about 15 minutes, but is it something that we're seeing more and more in the field, and why I think it's a really great time to have the tools and the skills around GIS is because our communities are facing some serious inequities. These are long-standing inequities, right? And I think that that affects women, specifically women of color and their families, children. And because these are complex, they're systematic, social and economic issues, they're really hard to address, right? All of us in GIS have an opportunity. Mckenzie mentioned the social justice, the social justice 40 layers, the justice 40 layers. And I don't think that those are useful unless the know-how, her know-how in terms of looking at that with her lens, and also being Mckenzie, your know-how, depending on where you are, where your community is locally, you can affect change, health, housing, education, criminal justice, policing in the workplace, right? You have that superpower. And when I learned that I had that superpower, it totally opened my world.
Love it. Thank you so much, Lauri.
Absolutely.
You always make me smile when just seeing your passion for this work and the tools and the power of GIS. And I think that's why we have a special, I'll say, burden to be about the work of DEI, because there's such a superpower for GIS and geospatial folks and the tools and the data to have an impact in this area of social justice, equity, and just you know, helping people to be, you know, have the representation that they should have in this world. So I think we, as, you know, business people, as organizations, we have a special calling, an opportunity to be out in front of our industry, and then our industry has a chance to be out in front of the world and to give the world these tools. So I think if we all have the right lenses and approaches and make a community of belonging, then it will just shine through in our superpowers and how we distribute, right, these great powers that we have. So Carolina, do you want to add to that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I want to recognize my superpower is not GIS. I'm here to enable all the amazing people like Lauri, who, or maybe indirectly even Mckenzie, right, using our technology, who do really wonderful, impactful things with GIS. And so I think what I can contribute is, you know, I feel like my superpower is influencing, you know, being in a role that inherent in itself, having to position, you know, how does anything that I do or advocate for kind of relate to that bottom line of the business, right? Not just what is right and good, but also how is it related to, right, the priorities of my stakeholders and the customers and all the people we're working with. And so if there's anything I could share with that, and I think, you know, influencing is really important to diversity and equity and inclusion and the work in this space, because you know, we're here in a call with people of like minds and maybe knowledge and backgrounds, but then so much of it is trying to reach people who don't see, don't understand why this is a priority, don't understand how this is related to the problems we see that we're trying to solve, right, with some of these layers in our maps and data and looking at different communities. And so I think my biggest kind of advice to anyone on this call, right, realizing you're not always going to work with like-minded people, that's such a hard part of this work and championing this work, is continuously, I mentioned it a little earlier, but thinking about that education element. What do people not know that I can help them understand? How do I link that to their own unique priorities, their view of the world, whether I agree with it or don't? How do I cross that bridge so maybe they'll understand? And that's very hard work. And maybe everyone here feels like they shouldn't have to do it. And I agree, but there's a reality, right? There's a reality that the influencing is a really important part of this work. And so I think where I've succeeded in influencing has always been, what is the storytelling? What is the value proposition? And there's so many solutions that GIS is providing. There's such a powerful impact it's making. And so how do you tie those stories back to the unique challenges, you know, your stakeholders are facing, and how do you continue to bridge that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome advice. And you know, I think the influential part is just as important, right? This is we always say that where matters, but I like to say that within that word where, we've got we've got her, we've got he, we've got, you know, we're, all these, you know, because it's about people at the end of the day, no matter what you're talking about with technology or not, it's always about people. And to that end, Mckenzie, we know Fish and Wildlife is about people and how they interact with wildlife, and making sure we can do that in a, you know, a way that is going to be sustainable. Anything you want to share on your challenges on the person-person side of things within your space, or, you know, through your pathway to become a GIS professional?
Yeah, I think in thinking along the lines of, you know, harnessing that power within the skill set, that's so amazing, and that makes women and diverse bodies in the geospatial field like so valuable, is so related, like Carolina said, to access to training and mentorship. And I feel really fortunate to have had Stephanie as a mentor, kind of bringing me into this field and supporting me. And I think that there is, and I've experienced this too, there's some barriers in getting into the more technical aspects of GIS as a woman, the development side of things, which is kind of what really interests me the most. So I found that the way to kind of deal with that is just kind of keep volunteering for things, and, you know, keep taking on projects and looking for those opportunities, as well as learning on my own, because those aren't, you know, there is a, you know, I think there's a preconceived notion on the side of men saying, oh, well, she might not know how to do XYZ, or, you know, so you kind of have to overcome that judgment and kind of show, you know, show what you can do and have that confidence to say, yeah, I can do that. I can take that on. Even if you don't know how. Like I always say, like, fake it until you make it. But I think it helps, because if you're going into something saying, oh, I don't know how to do this, like, you know, people are going to pick up on that. That being said, I think that is a bit of an injustice, and those opportunities should be more accessible. But going into, yeah, like IT is very male dominated. Like you have to kind of not worry as much about being super polite, and advocate for yourself. And that's a challenge, but it's something that I think gets better with time and the more experience you have. And yeah, so that's kind of been my experience. But all that being said, I find like people in the geospatial field in general, some of the like kindest, most professional people. So I think that there's such opportunities because there's so few women and diverse people in the field that we really have an opportunity to insert ourselves and make a difference.
You know, as a guy who's coming from the civil engineering world into GIS, and like many others didn't know anything about it, that was one of the nice things. You know, we're nerds, but we're nice. We're nice nerds, you know, so it's a great community, and it's people who really care about community and impact, and you know, using these tools for the right reasons. So I just want to let folks know we only got a few minutes left. So if you got a question, try to throw it in the chat right now, and we can try to catch it. But in the meanwhile, I just want to mention one of the chat items there. Someone shared how women in the UAE seem to run GIS. They were in Dubai and met 3 extremely competent women running the new GIS center there. That's awesome to hear about that sort of progress. And they sent a link there if you want to check that out. We'd love to share those sort of stories on our EDGE LinkedIn site. So if you're not part of the LinkedIn community with EDGE, please do. And that's what it's about. It's just all of us championing the new things that are happening, progress that's happening. It's a place where you can do some crowdsourcing and let folks know about events or outreach that you're trying to do. Again, we've got scholarships we're trying to get supported. And I've got 2 scholarships that I've been giving out for many years for women in GIS at the University of Illinois, for women in technology and engineering. So we just have to do this together as a community, but the best way to do that is to just let everybody know what's there. And that's what EDGE is all about, is being a network. So with that, let's kind of close some things out here while we're waiting for any questions. I want to give everyone a chance to any advice to young women, to women new to the career area, or just in general that you would share, or any just closing thoughts. And Mckenzie, you're already there, so we'll start with you and then go to the ladies of Esri.
I would say my advice to women, especially those that are starting out in the geospatial field, is to really focus on your resume and interviewing skills. They don't teach that in school usually. There are resources, take advantage of those, especially if you're still in school. But learning how to construct a resume and put in those keywords that companies are looking for and organizations is crucial. And if anybody needs resume help or interview help, I've put my contact info in the chat, and I'm happy to help, because that was a big hurdle for me, and it took me several months to even get companies to write back. So I think that's a special skill set, and I focus on that. And apply to jobs early if you're still in school. Don't wait until you're jobless after school.
Well, I'm glad those other folks snoozed on you, because we found a gem. And I couldn't agree with you more. At AAG this past weekend, I did a couple sessions and helping students with, networking skills, LinkedIn. These are the things that, unfortunately, universities are great. We spend all this time in academia so that we can set ourselves up for a career, but we don't do those soft skills sort of things to really make the difference and differentiate ourselves in getting the jobs. And that's something we'll be having some future EDGE-inars on and other outreach, because that's a big gap I feel with students. So thank you. That's great advice. Carolina, I know you could say some things on that, and want to turn it over to you for any parting words.
Yeah, I mean, Mckenzie really beat me to the resume, right? Those key kind of HR things that will help you. But I think what I could share and what I see the most is I think you will be successful in your career when you know what you truly want out of it. And so I think especially as women, sometimes we are socialized to focus on things that are very outside ourselves, right? Focus on your family first, focus on, pleasing others first, or some of these just deeply gendered kind of things that we're working to come out of and to move forward from. But sometimes that can still exist. And so you have this idea of what your career needs to be, or of what the work you do needs to be of. And I think what I would say is be clear on what you want and how that is important to you, how it matches your values, and you will find career success from there. Like, I know it sounds really simple, but the people I see who are just killing it, regardless of who are overcoming barriers and just or just doing amazing work in general, they have this very clear sense of self and sense of what they want to do, and then that guides them. And that's why you see some of the amazing work we see on this call, why we see some of this amazing work in GIS. We have people who have that very clear mission. And so my guidance to anyone here today is, if you don't have it, really try to understand what that is, and then find a way, or take partners with people in your life you trust, of, okay, how do I match what I want for myself and my life to my career and to the things I'm pursuing, especially within GIS.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Lauri, turn it over to you.
Oh my gosh, drop the mic. How can I really? Carolyn, lovely. Okay, so I think for me, it's engage in your communities. Use that superpower, go back, engage in your communities. They need you. There's only one you. You have the skills. Go into your communities, help them. I guarantee your communities have initiatives. They have, just work and tasks that you can apply yourself to. And then I think the last thing is, create community here as well. Nurture that community, network with each other. I put my email in the chat box, and there's a lot of other people at Esri that are happy to work with you and engage with you. So yeah, send me a note. Otherwise, Keith, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful, even though I'm sitting here talking, but it's been really lovely for me. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. And thank you all, ladies. This is, surpassed my expectations, even though I expected a great program here. A lot of good information, a lot of great encouragement. And I think, to your point, really momentum towards building this community. And that's what we're about at EDGE. So folks, I see a number of folks have left their contact information in the chat. Dr. Paget, good to see you, and some other folks. These are people who want to build community, want to work together, and we need to, right? Because it's a heavy lift. But it's certainly, if we're all pulling on that rope together. So go to the EDGE website, join the EDGE website, join the EDGE LinkedIn group. Stay tuned for future EDGE-inars. Let us know what, sort of topics and, things that you'd like to do. If you'd like to be a part of one of these panels or drive one of our future EDGE-inars, we'd love to do it. I think, Carolina, we might bring you back for some tips for college students on preparing, because I know that that's something that's big on everyone's list. And then maybe how we can all work to increase diverse talent and some other problems we're all trying to solve together. So thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been an awesome program, and please share it. For those who did make it, we'll have it on our YouTube, so you can share it with your colleagues and say, hey, if you missed this, come back and check it out. And we look forward to catching you on April 21st for the next one to celebrate success stories here in Geospatial and DEI. And then hopefully some of you can join us in Tampa on the 28th. Come on down, be a good time. We'll have a nice event on the boat, and we'll have a little party time afterwards. And there's a little somebody that might DJ at the end. So you just never know out here at EDGE. We take care of the business, but we have fun too. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.